Not a guy who was expecting to play by any means. He was kind of thrown into the mix there. So cool to see him step up, deliver. And yeah, happy for the Vikings to pull that one out. I like Dobbs. He's going to be a fun guy to root for the rest of the year.
Yeah, Josh Dobbs, straight out of NASA, tried to save the Arizona Cardinals season, but quickly realized you can't save the Arizona Cardinals season because they're the Arizona Cardinals. And then, gets traded to the Minnesota Vikings and then has a 5 days, right? 5 days or something there. Don't know everybody's name on the team. Here he is and winning a game against, decent to good Tampa Bay, I guess, depending on the weather. But I wouldn't say they were a bad team. I think they're pretty much average team. So that's, good. My good is going to CJ Stroud in the Houston Texans. This kid, it's funny when teams draft players, especially rookie quarterbacks. I think lately we've been kind of spoiled about instant success, forgetting that traditionally it usually takes 2 or 3 years for that person to come in and transform a franchise. But I guess in the modern era, they're expecting these kids to come in here and just instantly transform a franchise. The Texans have been awful forever. And, you get this kid, wasn't even drafted number 1 overall. And I feel so bad for Bryce Young a little bit because in itself, Bryce Young's struggles wouldn't be bad. The problem is the Panthers fans have to look over at Houston and see what the hell CJ Stroud's doing. So it makes everything Bryce Young do even worse. Like every incompletion is like, oh, CJ wouldn't, you know what I mean? It sucks for him. But this kid has just gotten to the league. He's breaking all types of records. He had like 5 touchdowns and almost 500 passing yards against Tampa Bay. I read some stat. He has more passing touchdowns than Zach Wilson and Kenny Pickett, which is hilarious. Which is by far the funniest stat I've ever, these I don't know if we're calling them Twitter pages, X pages now, come up with these ridiculous stats. And that was probably one of my favorites. But was just looking at some of his, he's 7th in the league in passing yards. He's 3rd in yards per attempt. I mean, he has, again, matter of fact, in that game alone, he has the same amount of passing touchdowns as the Giants and the Jets do all season. That's funny.
Yeah,
that is funny. So, so my good is definitely going to Houston. My bad, speaking of, are the Jets. I can't blame it all on Aaron Rodgers because they went out and brought in a bunch of talent for Aaron Rodgers. So this roster, this is not the Texans roster, right? This is not some bum ass roster out there. They have players, maybe not household names anymore, but all offseason, what did we say? All they need is a quarterback. They have a really good defense. They have really good this. They have really Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson. Now all that. The offense is terrible. It's terrible. It's one of the worst things to see that they have. Let me see this. They didn't score an offensive touchdown at all on Monday Night Football, and this is the 16th time over the past 5 years that they have gone without an offensive touchdown. That's ridiculous considering all of the talent that they had. And you can't just sit there and say Aaron Rodgers with his Achilles, maybe it is, maybe it wasn't really a tear. Like it has to be more than just a quarterback situation. Zach Wilson, it's not working. And I'm shocked that the Jets. Yeah, they're both awful, but yes, the Jets have a better plan. Once Aaron Rodgers got down, why didn't they bring in a veteran quarterback? Why didn't they bring in somebody, they already knew what they had in Zach Wilson. So it just shocked me that they kept it going with old Zach Wilson. Who's your bad?
Yeah, my bad. I'm going to hand it to the Seattle Seahawks here. Seahawks have been kind of a trendy team that everybody loves for the length of probably the past 2 years. The Geno Smith redemption arc has been fun to watch and follow along with. But Lamar Jackson just went in and punched them in the mouth this week. And a huge statement win by the Ravens to really elevate themselves to the legitimate contenders in the NFL. But for me, I think that was more disappointing on the Seahawks standpoint that you couldn't at least hang with that team. That I think there was a lot of hopes. Like when you look across the NFC, it's a weak group at the top. That the Seahawks are a team that should be in that mix. and I just don't think they are. That I think this team is not quite good enough. I think Geno Smith is coming back down to earth a little bit, which is disappointing to see. So
Yeah.
for me, it's the Seahawks are the bad, and I think for me this week was kind of a realization game of they might not be quite exactly what a lot of people are making them out to be.
Yeah. I had them winning that division this year. I thought we were going to just see it rolling, and as you said, just comes, I drafted that rookie running back, that Charbonnet or whatever his name is. He hasn't done shit. All of it's just not all of it is just not working the way that people think,
Right.
thought that going into the season, which, again, the roster didn't have much turnover, so you thought it would be a little bit better than this. So is it Geno Smith, or is it maybe teams that just have tape out on them? Maybe they have Jim Harbaugh's scouting team out there on the Seahawks, and everybody has everything figured out. The F and Fugly, Sean, stands for Frank Reich. It has to be the Panthers. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Like, thank God the Panthers exist, or else we'd be talking about the Jets and Giants every week in this category. But I thought this would be the game for the Panthers to build some confidence. But, because the Colts, they're a frisky team. I like Gardner Minshew, but they're not, I think they have the bottom 5 defense, right? Like, they're somewhere in the 25, 26, 27, somewhere in there. And, so in terms of pass defense, so I thought, great, Bryce Young, go out there, get some confidence. Adam Thielen's actually been killing it. The one player that everybody thought would suck this year, people thought he was washed, and he ended up being the best player you got. And here we are. I know people were making fun of his height. I don't buy into the height thing. I just, going in, I didn't think he was the best quarterback available. I'm not going to sit there and act like I saw the CJ Stroud thing from a mile away. I thought the Panthers should take Anthony Richardson just off of tools and the prototype of Cam Newton Jr., that type of deal. But, even that I'm looking wrong on. CJ Stroud just looks amazing, but I definitely didn't pick Bryce Young. I didn't think, this was before the Mina Kimes picture. And so, yeah, it's just, he had a 48 passer rating against the Colts.
Yikes. Yeah.
It's not good. It's not good. And it sucks for him. And I get it. Rookie quarterback. I'm not going to write him off. I don't think he's a bust or anything like that. The team is not good. But when you look at it again, when you compare it to CJ Stroud, last year, you would say the Panthers were better than the Texans, or at least had a better roster, and which reflected in record. But now the only thing that the Texans really changed was the quarterback, and they added Devin Singletary from the Bills. And, he's not anything to write home about. But the Texans' success is because of the quarterback. They drafted the guy. The quarterback definitely covers up a lot. So that's where we are with that.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the CJ Stroud overshadowing so much, because it feels like Stroud is doing more with less down in Houston, that he's finding a way to elevate this team in a way that straight up I would take this Panthers pieces around him over the Texans, and to kind of see that how this is resulting is a shot in the face to everyone here. And it is nice that at least Bryce Young got the one win under his belt, that at least that he isn't the winless team sitting out here, but it's still been very disappointing. And yeah, it has not been the cream of the crop rookie class this year by any means, except for Stroud.
So, yeah, except for Stroud. If you see me and Sean look over off the screen, the Sixers are about to tip off. I picked the worst possible time to do this show for both of us, but here we are. So before we move on to our Sixers, I do have to do the bucket of doom. I believe most of us lost except me. I had an automatic win because the Niners were in on a bye. And then I believe Burt won because he had the Eagles, and they beat the Cowboys like they always do, because the Cowboys lose. That's what they do. I told you, Sean, it don't matter how good the Cowboys start. At some point, they will cowboy, and that's just the way it is. All right. Burt, he has the Rams. I believe Matt Stafford is out. They have the bones of Carson Wentz just signed there. So Corey has the Saints. I have the Bears. I'm going to probably be throwing that one back. Carl with the Panthers. Oh, we got some shit today. Yeah, Mike, the Giants. He's a Giants fan, so I don't know. He might actually keep that, but he should think with your head, not your heart. Ty, the Cardinals, who may or may not be getting Kyler Murray. Awful picks. I am throwing the Bears back. Oop, getting me a nice shake in there. My second pick is the Vikings. We just talked about it. Josh Dobbs. What do we call him? The Pastronaut? I like
Astronaut.
that.
Yeah.
I do like that. I do like that. Okay. So now the reason I really got you here. Sixers tipping off. Nice little 5-0 start against the Boston Celtics here on November 8th. So the vibes in the city are great. I mean, people were panicking. I was panicking a little bit. I don't like, after going through the Ben Simmons stuff, I was not a fan of keeping James Harden around. I wasn't a fan of Daryl Morey talking about patience this, patience that. We saw what that did to a team well into the season, and it's not a good thing. And from what it sounds like, Josh Harris decided, hey, Daryl Morey, enough. Like, you can't be in charge of this anymore. Made a move. A lot of people rolled their eyes. Not me, because this is exactly what I was asking for the last couple of years with this team. I don't believe the super team method works. And if it does, it has to be a specific group of stars, right? This is why the Clippers are not going to work.
No.
They're too similar. And I'm not going to overreact to their one game. They're going to have great games, and they're too talented not to. I get it. Their problem is in the playoffs, depth, and then one of them's getting injured. That's just how history tells us the future, right? The past tells us the future. So one of them or two of them are going to get hurt, and Russell Westbrook is going to disappear or do too much, and James Harden's going to disappear. That's that story. The Sixers, however, are doing something a little bit different, I think, that I've seen in the last couple of years. And what I've been actually clamoring for is depth and versatility, right? If you get, and this is the method that worked for the Golden State Warriors. This is the method that has worked for the Denver Nuggets and the Milwaukee Bucks. And lo and behold, and to an extent has worked for the Miami Heat with Jimmy Butler. It's you have a guy who can penetrate, and we have that in Tyrese Maxey. And then obviously you have your star player in Joel Embiid, who sucks all the defense to wherever he wants to go on the court, and everybody spaces out and hits open three-point shots. Team defense, everything's moving in one unison, not two-player dominant ball. Hey, your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn. That doesn't work. And so I'm very happy with what I've seen so far, because we have now the depth to compete with Denver, right? Or Milwaukee in the East, Boston here, who's probably going to me, our biggest threat, because that Milwaukee thing, their defense isn't good. We knew that wasn't going to be good, but that doesn't look nearly as good as I thought it was going to look. But it's, 6 games in, however many games in. What is your outlook on the Sixers? How do you feel? What were your thoughts of the trade? And then how do you feel now about, 6 games in, 5 games in?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying that I totally agree with your sentiment about the super teams, and I think we're seeing the NBA kind of phase away from that, with the exception of the Clippers now, who seem to be doubling down on it by going with the big four of what they're trying to build there. But I do think the Sixers kind of skipped a couple steps in the process when everything was building by falling in love with this concept of star hunting and getting these big names, the Jimmy Butlers, the Tobias Harris at that time, chasing LeBron James, chasing Kawhi, when really the best way, like, what has been lost over these past couple of years is really just continuity on this roster, that there's been very few players that have stuck around for the long term. Think about Furkan Korkmaz is the second longest tenured Sixer on roster. Like, that's pretty crazy. Yeah. But my favorite part about the trade as a whole is it's a little bit of a kick the can down the road a little, that you now stock the cupboard with assets. You have these draft picks, which are in turn going to be very valuable draft picks, potentially extremely valuable as when you think about towards 2028, with all these guys on the Clippers with injury concerns past the prime of their career. Like, and all of them on expiring contracts, there's very much a world where these guys walk and those turn into potentially top at least near the top picks. So those are picks that are going to be valuable. It gets the Harden headache out of there, and it allows you to truly look at this team. I think the biggest question is Tyrese Maxey. I mean, his growth has been far and away above what I think anybody could have expected. But now is the chance to look at him and say, are you ready to be the number 2 on a championship contender? I'm not willing to say no to this question, because he's just improved so rapidly in every area of his game, and we're already seeing the playmaking leap from him this year. But I like that they have a deep roster. They have a lot of nice pieces, guys that I think were overlooked in the deal. Players like Nick Batum, who are going to be very helpful as a rotational piece. And then you can kind of feel out what is missing on this team and then go out and get that at the deadline if they need to.
Yeah. Addition by subtraction, big time, right? You get, and it's literally less about the drama that surrounds James Harden now that we're drama free. Again, learning from the Ben Simmons thing, that drama, going into training camp, having to answer questions about this guy. Is that a cell phone in his pocket? I don't know. Where is he going to be at? And when the whole James Harden thing, I said, how could you have a brand new coach trying to instill a new culture in this team?
Mm-hmm.
And the players have to answer questions about James Harden, man. It's like, why would you even allow that near? And thankfully, Josh Harris stepped in, and I don't know what that relationship has. I don't know how that's going to play out. I'm not going to shed any tears if Daryl Morey goes away for causing this mess in the first place. I'll never forgive him for denying the Tyrese Halliburton Buddy Hield for Ben Simmons trade. Anyway, so yeah, it's to see Furkan Korkmaz being unleashed, right? And you hear it in the comments of the players. Oh, it's not just two-man ball. We're playing as a team now, not one person's this, that, and the other. Tyrese Maxey, again, another stat I saw. Only CP3 and Tyrese Maxey, the only two players in NBA history to hit 40 assists before 10 turnovers. Tyrese has 7 on the season. That's nuts. That's nuts. So, all this talk about, James Harden, it turned into a facilitator, Maxey's doing it, man. He's doing it. And so that's an overstated thing right there. That's one thing that people can look at. And now you're not hindering his growth. This goes back to my super team comment. It only works with a specific group of players, right?
Yeah.
Miami worked because LeBron, Bosh, and D Wade. Big thanks to Chris Bosh for sacrificing a little bit, but they all their games complemented each other. They fit because not all of them did the same thing. So that's why that worked. It's not working in LA because Anthony Davis isn't who we think he is. And again, he has to have the ball. He has to. He can't. And LeBron, his greatness can only cover up so much for that team. So all the iterations of that Laker team never worked because Russell Westbrook didn't work there for the same reason that it's not going to work on the Clippers. It doesn't mesh well. So the Sixers have that. Tyrese and Embiid don't have to do anything together. And I'm perfectly fine with Tobias being the third guy. And all you Tobias haters out there that have been asking to get him traded for the last 3-4 years because he wasn't shooting 100% from the field and, playing 5,000 minutes a game and not doing everything perfect. Don't be bigging him up now. I see you guys out there trying to hype up Tobias Harris. Now, I keep receipts. Tobias Harris has been an unsung hero of the team. You can hear it from the players. You hear it from anybody who's around the team. Tobias is our Chris Bosh. He had to sacrifice everything he does for this team. And I am so glad that Nick Nurse is here to clean that up. So as we transition, the Nick Nurse effect. Carl and Mike say they want to throw their helmets back. So
that was Bears.
Yeah. Let's see. Panthers for Carl now has the Texans. We just raved about them. They got a big game coming up. I don't know against who, but I know they're coming up. Mike, the Bengals, his daughter's favorite team. I don't know how that happened, but Joe Burrow, the Bengals losing their obligatory 3 games. They suck first 3 games of every season, and then all of a sudden they're turning the Super Bowl title contenders. And so it looks like they're turning it on the right time. Beating my Bills, embarrassing my. Okay. They got every year they keep saying they're going to break up Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum, and it seems like every time that becomes a topic, they have like one of these monster duo games together, and I'm really hoping it doesn't come right now. It's not. Yeah. Not good.
And I will say, like, this, for starters, I like both of them quite a bit as players. I'm a Jalen Brown guy, as much as he gets quite a bit of hate for the left hand and a lot of stuff that I think is over-exaggerated. I do think that it's a duo that should stick together. I get the debate or the mindset of them having overlapping strengths and weaknesses, but the bottom line is athletic, switchable, versatile wings are the most valuable position in the NBA nowadays. If you have 2 of them as your 2 best players, you're in pretty good shape. And we saw the Celtics kind of reshape their identity by ditching Marcus Smart, adding Kristaps Porzingis, going to play a lot more 5-out basketball to allow them to maneuver their way into the paint and attack in the way that they see fit. And both those guys continue to get better. The playmaking leap by Tatum's been impressive. So this Celtics team has looked very good this year. They haven't really played anybody either. So I think this Sixers versus Celtics game is kind of the first big test for both teams. But yeah, this will be a statement for the top of the Eastern Conference, the top two teams in net rating right now.
So getting to Nick Nurse, who I think is not just the best acquisition for the Sixers, even though we've had plenty of great talent added to this team. I think he's the best acquisition in the entire NBA for any singular team. Mm-hmm. What he has done to this Sixers team, specifically the players that were already here. And this is a perfect example of why you can't just judge a team off of its roster, or you can't judge a player. Kelly Oubre, a 20-point per game scorer, he was always a decent, nice rotation piece. You know, I know when he had a hard time in Golden State, he couldn't hit a shot, and then made his bones down there in Charlotte, and became a person that people have noticed. But I mean, to see what he is now, I mean, he's going to earn himself a contract, and that's why hopefully we get him. Hopefully we get this ring this year, because I don't know if we're going to be able to afford him. Going into the future, depending on what the Sixers got planned. So, but sticking with Nick Nurse, what have you seen from him specifically that you like most about what he has changed about this team?
Yeah, number one is just ball movement and player movement. The off-ball movement has been the biggest thing. That under the Doc Rivers system, the Doc Rivers mindset was very clearly that he made the adjustment to slide Joel Embiid up to the elbow and then basically space the floor with shooters around. And the debate being there and the mindset there being you either leave Joel Embiid one-on-one and he scores every time, at which he led the NBA in scoring the past 2 seasons, or you bring a double and we find a kick to the open three-point shooter. And the Sixers did rank number 1 in three-point percentage across the NBA last year. And while in theory that's a mindset that works, it just becomes far too predictable, and you can do different layers defensively to just kind of mix that up. With this new Nick Nurse system, there's guys flying off ball, making back cuts, setting screens to free up guys off ball in ways that we just have not seen. We're seeing a growth from each of these players, including Joel Embiid, including Tyrese Maxey, all these guys as playmakers, because there's easier passes for them to make. It's not asking a guy to create his own pass. There's simply a guy open that you just have to get the ball to. So there's been much more of that. Guys feel like they know what to do in a way that I didn't feel was the case under Doc, that there was a lot of ISO ball and just freestyling out there. Like it feels like they're looking for cutters with the intent of, I know a guy is going to be there. And I thought it was going to take much longer than this into the season for the guys to get on the same page. But a ton of credit to Nick Nurse and a ton of credit to these guys for buying in, because there just is much more of a schematic and stylistic identity with this team that was not there before.
As I'm taking quick glances at the game, it just, to me, seems like the Sixers aren't hitting the shots, the wide open shots that we've been hitting. It's first quarter, they can heat up, but the main thing that I like specifically from Joel Embiid, and you mentioned it, besides ball movement, attacking.
Yeah.
Joel Embiid did a lot of just standing at the 3-point line last year, jacking up bad shots, a lot of ISO ball, as you said. I like that this team runs their play, and whoever the play is called for attacks. Joel Embiid is getting the ball, couple dribbles, and he's going to the rim. He is the biggest, most athletic big. Nobody can stop him. I was like, he's more Shaq than he realizes. Yeah. Nobody's going to stop you, man. Like, why are you playing up top like you're Brandon Roy or somebody? Like, if you don't doing crossovers and stuff and hitting fadeaway jumpers, like, go to the rim. And this year I've noticed specifically, especially that 48-point game he had the other day against Washington, he was just attacking those boys. Like, nobody can stop that. And not just him, Tobias Harris, coming from LA, one of the best mid-range guys we had, one of the best mid-range attacking forwards in the NBA. And he stopped doing that here. Now, to his credit, he has been asked to do a bunch of things here. And I can imagine him losing himself a little bit. But Nick Nurse, knowing what he had, I know when Nick Nurse, when he first came here, and he specifically mentioned Tobias Harris, you couldn't wait to coach. When people asked him, what could you wait to coach? People were expecting James Harden or Tyrese. He said, yeah, Joel Embiid, of course, Tobias Harris. because he knows that's valuable what he brings. Very happy to see Tobias attacking more. Joel Embiid attacking. Tyrese Maxey's always been an attacker, but not waiting for a play and guys standing in the corner waiting for James Harden or Joel Embiid to maybe pass it to him. And now you're ice cold with no rhythm. Nick Nurse is very good in getting his guys in rhythm. That's why I'm not like right now. This time last year, I'd be worried about us not making shots early in the game. But nope, we play so fast, we play so loose, and everybody's moving around. People will get warmed up. I'm sure the Sixers are feeling what we're feeling. It's the Celtics. It is our biggest test. Little nerves. They're in home. The Celtics kind of have had our number the last couple of years. I'm sure there's a lot of that mental. A lot of this stuff is mental, but not to, no pun intended, trust the process here. Trust what you've been doing to get you to 5-1. Easily could have been 6-1 if it wasn't for Joel Embiid having butterfingers late in that Milwaukee game on a couple of those possessions. And you easily could be undefeated right now. So just stick to what got you here. The Celtics are deep. They're one of the top teams in the NBA. So obviously I wasn't expecting it to be easy, but I like having Furkan Korkmaz, everybody being involved deep into the, I mean, we could legit go 12 deep if we wanted to. So I'm excited, and we're not even scratching the surface. I'm very excited for KJ Martin. I loved him in Houston. He gives me a lot of Matisse Thybulle vibes in terms of his athleticism, transition. Obviously defensively, I'm not comparing them to defensively, but I'm saying style wise, I think they're very similar. And so I can't wait to see how we integrate him a little bit more. I feel like we've seen more Jaden Springer in these first couple games than we did all of the Doc Rivers. I don't know what the hell Doc Rivers was looking at. Jaden Springer can play. He can play. Go ahead.
Doc Rivers was very much a check the birth certificate, and if you're under 21, you're not seeing the court. And that was the story with Jaden Springer. I will say, to stick up for not for Doc, but for I guess the Springer thing, is I do think he benefited from just playing the extra basketball at the G League. He's a kid that came into the NBA at 18 years old and just wasn't quite ready from that standpoint. He's definitely taken some leaps this year, which is exciting. But yeah, I'm curious how Nurse kind of cuts down this rotation, because it's awesome to have this flexibility and be able to go 12 deep to switch things up on a night-to-night basis. But the end of the day is somebody's going to have to get the short end of the stick on some of these things. Tonight is a night where I'm definitely going to be paying attention to what rotations he goes with, who are the guys. I'm surprised we're seeing some first quarter Furkan Korkmaz minutes out here. So it looks like Furk has a real chance to prove himself, and I am happy for the resurgence of him. He's a guy who's had periods of time where he's looked very good and can play. So cool to see a little bit of resurgence. He brings a little playmaking along with the shooting, and he's competed defensively. That this Nick Nurse system has made life easier for guys on defense, that it's way less one-on-one stand up and play your man, that there's much more blitzing, trapping, guys running all over the place. It's hectic for opponents. It's forcing turnovers. We're seeing way more deflections than have been in the past, and Furkan's fitting right into that. So all these athletic wings, these switchable guys, this is the first time in my entire lifetime that we have an abundance of wings to surround these guys. And that's very clearly, I think, the system the Sixers are going with is you have Joel Embiid, you have Tyrese Maxey, and let's just get as many switchable shooters around them.
Yeah, I do love the rotations that we have. You could tell he's still trying to figure out who's complementing who or who's better with who. Again, going 10 deep at times, outside of garbage time, he's cleared the bench out, obviously in garbage minutes, but even like you said, Furkan Korkmaz early minutes, in the like halfway through the first quarter, and that Roko's playing already. It's just it's nice to see some of these new guys. I saw there was a Marcus Morris sighting the other day, so I can't wait to see when he gets a little acclimated, and Batum, who spent the first couple of days away. Obviously, Nick Nurse holds him in high regard because he's playing already big early minutes for the team. It was nice to see him. I was excited about him from the jump. I think he will fill the role that Al Horford was supposed to fill. A lot of people thought he would come and do here, and I think Batum kind of fits that mold a little bit better. I'm trying to see where we're at here. Look at Roko flirting with the female ref. Good for you, bud. Nick Nurse, culture-wise, to me, putting players in a position to succeed to me has been the biggest thing. Believing in other players. Doc believed in James and he believed in Embiid, and it seemed like that was it. It seemed like he had Tyrese on a little bit of a leash. Tyrese wasn't allowed to be free unless Embiid or Harden weren't there for whatever reason. So you definitely see a lot of what we see of Tyrese now. You basically only saw that last year when it was him in like the second and sometimes third unit, right? Like sometimes it wasn't with him. He was kind of just running around, and he got a lot of his stuff in transition where he had to kind of make a steal to get his own basket. But this year, definitely the biggest change is, hey, Tyrese, and Joel Embiid has even said it. Hey, I'm the process. Tyrese is the franchise. It's his, we're going with him, and I'm here to help him out, which is nice to see from a leader like Joel Embiid. Obviously, that's not true, but to me, that's different. A different Joel Embiid as if we've seen in the past, where he's openly like, he didn't do that even when Jimmy Butler was here. He was like, yeah, me and Jimmy, like we're together. He definitely didn't do that when Ben was here, and even when James was here, it was still a little bit of my team. And I'm kind of curious of when all that fell apart. James Harden famously didn't go to Joel Embiid's wedding, things of that nature. He's going to him and PJ Tucker going to parties instead of going to Joel Embiid's like baby shower and shit. Like it's things like that. If you don't pay attention because the Sixers were winning at the time, but after the fact, you can kind of see where that all fell apart. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the Sixers and the Clippers kind of stack up. Early returns say that the Sixers definitely won the trade. I think the Sixers would win the trade because not just what it did for them now, but what it does for them in the future. You mentioned earlier, all the assets, all the picks, flexibility into the future. A lot of these contracts are going to come off the books next year, plus the picks. The Clippers are not going to be good in 5 years, so that pick swap's very valuable. So that leads me to what is next for the Philadelphia 76ers. What do you think should happen, or what do you think will happen with everything that the Sixers had attained, and what do you want to happen?
Yeah, so I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I really do feel like one of the biggest advantages to getting the deal done when they did is you have some time to sit back and truly evaluate this roster for what it is, try and figure out what the missing ingredient is. I do think ultimately they're probably a little bit short on top end talent, that I think they probably need a true wing. And I think that looks like a move for kind of combining a couple rotation players for one guy. In my ideal scenario would probably be OG Anunoby would be the piece that I kind of have in mind right now. And I do think it's important that the Sixers do strike before the trade deadline, that I think it's important to go for it this year, for starters, because you never know what the finite amount of runs that you have in Joel Embiid is. That as much as, knock on wood, he's been far healthier than we've expected for the past couple years, even though he still gets his lumps and bruises and annoying little knocks here and there. The bottom line is like one fall or one step and that game plan all changes. So I do think it's important to go with it as much as you can every year, year in and year out. And the other part of that is the Sixers have been very clear about prioritizing this cap space plan, that looking ahead to this offseason, they're going to have the second most cap space in the NBA behind only the Orlando Magic. And they have that while having a blossoming star in Tyrese Maxey and the MVP of the league in Joel Embiid. That's a pretty unique spot to be in as a franchise. I know the track record for the Sixers as far as luring top-end free agents is far from stellar, that Al Horford's really the best case guy that we can hang our hat in, and we had to super overpay for him, and he hated it here, and he was terrible here. So that didn't work out there. But I also think it's important because if you attack, you make a trade now, say OG is the guy, and OG is also an expiring contract, so he'll be a free agent this year. You trade for him before the deadline. You can re-sign him with bird rights, which still leaves an additional max slot. If you're then looking at a lineup next year with Tyrese Maxey, OG Anunoby, Joel Embiid, a max player to be named later, and then one other piece, that's a pretty good lineup and probably the strongest that I've ever felt in the Joel Embiid era. So they do have the flexibility. I am excited. I do think they're going to make a splash this year still, but they have plenty of options down the line, which is a far better spot to be in than they have been for the past couple of years.
Yeah, so OG's been a name that I've heard tossed around. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of. I even heard like a crazy, if Miami doesn't pick it up, bringing Jimmy Butler back somehow. Yeah. That I wouldn't hate it. I like that's probably the like a Jimmy Butler or a Zach LaVine. If we can get one of those two guys for not giving up too much of our depth, like if we can just give up the picks and maybe a back end, player, I guess that would have to, would have to make sense. I don't I don't want to give up Tobias or anything like that. I know that's the easy name to throw around because of the money, but if we can kind of parlay those picks and come a back end player that isn't going to play anyway, I would love, I would love to bring in like a Zach LaVine or possibly Jimmy Butler is a little bit too pie in the sky. I think that's too unrealistic, but I think you're spot on. A guy like OG, Zach LaVine's probably the best we could ask for that wouldn't disrupt too much of what we got going on. I think somebody like that would be great
Yeah.
for Philly.
I think LaVine gets a little bit of a bad rap from kind of the perception of him that I see a lot of people kind of throw comments about him being a shot chucker or being a guy with not the, I mean, he has his flaws as a basketball player. He's not a stellar defender. You could make the argument he's a little repetitive next to Maxey, but I think it gets overlooked. Like, he's a really talented off-ball shooter. He's a good off-ball mover. He's a good catch and shooter. He's a guy that can space the floor. And he does have ties to both Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, that he trains with Joel Embiid through Drew Hanlon, that they do a lot of workouts together. He's also a New Balance and clutch athlete, as is Tyrese Maxey. So they've done their commercials together and all those things. So there is some connections there. Chicago seems like it's on the verge of blowing up just about every single night. So that is definitely a name to watch. And for me, the biggest thing that over this next stretch of games and tonight against the Celtics is absolutely a big one is, what is the need? Is it why I shift towards OG is I kind of view defensively as a bigger need, is we need a guy who's going to be able to match up with Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown. While Kelly Oubre and Nick Batum have looked awesome so far, I don't know if I feel great about that over the length of the 7-game series. And I do think OG is a guy who is being asked to do a little bit too much in Toronto right now. But you bring him over to Philadelphia and he's got a little more reduced role where he can zero in on defense, still be a good spot up shooter, still create a little bit. I think it's going to be a far better role for him. So that's kind of where my mind goes on why that's a preference. But that could absolutely change on watching things if Maxey doesn't quite have the on-ball capabilities that he's shown against some of these more poor teams. If we want to get another active ball handler like LaVine who can run the offense to an extent, that's definitely still on the table. So I do like the idea of kind of not having to make a trade. And to your point about getting James Harden out of here, if they had waited up till the deadline to do this deal, then it's just that deal. Then that is the move. Now they already got that done and can now just see what is truly needed, which is the best case scenario for them.
Absolutely. All this time to assess, you get it done early, not only just to get the headache out of there, but now you're right. Hey, we have these assets. We have these players. Let's see how the first half of the season goes. We may not need anything. We may be able to take this to the off season and we're good and we can make some sort of deal later. But you've talked me into OG. We have a lot of ball handlers. We have a lot of guys that can do that. Anthony Melton, Kelly, we have guys that can do kind of what Zach LaVine would be brought in here to do. I think maybe in my short-sightedness with thinking about just talent, right? Okay, he's talented name. But yeah, I mean, I would defense, and then it was an easy transition because that's a Nick Nurse guy. It would be such an easy transition. And OG has been giving us fits over the, in the playoffs and things like that. And he can knock down a shot and he can, but again, another Pat Bev, another guy that annoys offenses, that can disrupt things. And so I liken it to that. I think I do like that. I think I do like the OG or somebody like that. And even if it's not that big of a deal, we have so many picks. We don't even have to give up a player. If we can send a pick or two for like a Joe Ingles, just somebody like that, somebody who can just sit on the bench and come in and produce points for us, just sit in the corner, play a little defense and knock down shots, big shots whenever we need them. Somebody like that, maybe not Joe. I'm not saying Joe Ingles, just somebody of that ilk, like on that level, on the back end of the bench, just to kind of shore up things. Somebody like that. If not a big splash. I don't believe in overpaying or the one thing I don't want the Sixers to do is not mess up what they already have.
Yeah.
Which seems to be working so far, and overcorrecting, right? Overcorrecting something. Daryl Morey seems to be very star chasey, right? We got to get, we can't trade Ben Simmons without getting a star. And lo and behold, that star was James Harden, and it was always going to be James Harden. And again, according to Brian Windhurst and Stephen A. Smith, we could have flipped Ben Simmons. Imagine that. Imagine the team where we kept Seth Curry and Andre Drummond and had Tyrese Halliburton and Buddy Hield. I mean, you couldn't tell me that team wasn't championship worthy. But nope.
both Halliburton and Maxey at 23 years old, and
Oh,
really would be great compliments too. Like
yeah,
Halliburton was second in the NBA in assists last year, only to James Harden, and it's like that guy is still a 40% 3-point shooter. It would have been perfect. It sucks doing the 2020 hindsight. I
yeah,
will like lean into the I understand the mindset between wanting to get Joel more of a win now piece, which Halliburton has improved leaps and bounds since going to
yeah,
Indiana in a way that he didn't in Sacramento or wasn't that guy at the time. So now that
yeah,
we can look and kind of see that leap, it is much easier. But I understand that James Harden is his guy and that he wanted to give like the win now chance. And there were stretches where it worked great. I still give
yeah.
him a little bit of leniency, but yeah, looking back, there's no doubt that Halliburton would have been the move.
And to be fair, I think it didn't work not for basketball reasons. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I think
for
it
sure.
didn't work. It didn't work to me.
Ego.
There's not anybody on this planet that could convince me that James Harden didn't tank us in the playoffs. The sudden just lack, like he just disappeared, man. Like star players like that just don't shut it off.
Yeah.
I have no doubt in my mind the guy who would go over to China on cameras, a bunch of cameras, and publicly call his GM a liar is also the guy that, you're not going to tell me he's not above tanking a playoff game. He don't care, so it's not, so a guy like that, again, just glad he's off the team. I'm glad it got done early. And you're right. The Sixers have so many options, something that we haven't had in a long time. I mean, you say in your lifetime, damn near in my lifetime. And I was alive when we went to I remember watching Allen Iverson step over Tyronn Lue live, like on a grainy box television in my uncle's basement. So it was, well, no, he had one of those like big projector screen things, like 80-inch things, made all this humming noise every time you turned it on. It was hilarious. But yeah, he shout out to Hitachi, I think it was, or Mitsubishi, something like that. But anyway, yeah, it's very, very nice to see the Sixers. It's a commercial, so I don't have the score up in front of me right now, but holding it down. Sean, this was awesome. Do you have a game ball you want to give out?
Game ball, I'm just gonna hand mine straight up to Tyrese Maxey because
Yeah.
I do feel like so much of this positive outlook just is not possible if he doesn't flourish in the way that he has. And I don't say this lightly when I say that I've never seen a player improve at the rate he is. Like from the knock on him coming out of college, being him not being a good enough shooter, to being a top 5 3-point shooter by percentage in the NBA and two out of his first 3 years in the NBA. That just does not happen. Now to see him take this playmaking leap after never truly being asked to be a point guard, even looking back at his days at Kentucky where he played next to Emmanuel Quickly, like he wasn't a true point guard there either. And then through Ben Simmons, through James Harden, just kind of being thrown to the fire and then saying, doesn't matter, I'll get it done. And I do feel that if there was no Tyrese Maxey, we're looking at a much scarier situation with the Joel Embiid wanting out and just the future of this franchise. So my game ball goes to Tyrese Maxey just for really making this all possible.
Sports Bet Steve's picks. He's 22-8 on the season. He went a perfect 3-0 this past week. He has the Bengals -6.5 versus the Texans, the Jags +3.5 versus the Niners, and the Seahawks -6.5 versus the Commanders. So shout out to Sports Bet Steve. My game ball is going to Jim Harbaugh. You know what, man? Do you, bud? Do
Yeah.
you? You know who doesn't want you to succeed?
Liberal media.
That's exactly who it is. These guys, Paul Feinbaum and all these losers at ESPN hating on you. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. So Jim Harbaugh, my game ball definitely goes out to you. Mike says game ball goes out to Ashley for letting me come. So yeah, my wife, shout out to my wife. She gets a game ball. She's letting me fly up to New Jersey. I will be there at the Todd Frazier Pong tournament, November 18th. I'm going to fly in for the event and I'm flying right back out because I can't take any time off of work, but I will be there. So there may or may not be a show next week because we're going to be broadcasting live for there. So shout out to Todd Frazier. Check out toddfrazier.events. I believe I don't think there's any team availability, but if you want to sponsor the event in any way, all the proceeds are going to the Children's Specialized Hospital in New Jersey. Help out some people who really need it. We're going to have a lot of fun. There's a ton of great sponsors, and I can't wait to come down and hang out with all of you. Very grateful for Sean Barnard for coming out and hanging out with me, bud. The beginning of the show, I did not hit the go live, so tell us where to find all your stuff.
Yeah, all good. Appreciate you for having me on once again. And yeah, you can check me out on the Fox 1025 The Gambler Airwaves. Just launched a show called Picks and Roll with Sean Brace on there. So we'll be talking pretty Sixers centers, but diving into the entire NBA slate and some college hoops as well. So plenty coming out there. Also can always catch me on Pick Swap Media. I'll be live on there immediately following these Sixers games. So you can get a little post game action there. You can check out my written work on Philly Sports Network and also check out Sixers Digest on YouTube. That I forgot to mention that the first time. So been putting out some short form content out there. So check that out as well.
Arthur Smith, you were ruining my fantasy season by not playing Bijan Robinson. So, sir, as soon as you get fired from your job, take your ass directly to hell. And when you get there, say hello to Art Briles for us.